What's going on, YouTube? This is Ken. This is my third video in this progression. Yesterday we left off talking about trauma and the necessity of healing emotional wounds from our past so that they don't continue to play out for us in the form of unconscious programming moving forward. That until we can heal the wounds that are inside us and the past traumas and emotional injuries that we've incurred along the way, until we can heal those, we're going to continue to play those out and put those out into the world. We touched on the concept of hurt people. And I think that if you didn't catch that, go back and check it out. I think there's a lot there, and I think it's absolutely the first step to any real change taking place in the world. It has to start within us. So building off that, I want to get into some other limitations that that are still on a personal level, that again interfere with our own growth, with our spiritual growth, with our personal growth, with our growth in conscious awareness, and therefore, all of that is required if we're going to have any healing in the world. So coming off of the emotional injuries and continuing to focus on ourselves, I want to talk about the role of paradigms and how powerful paradigms can be in either helping us accomplish the things that we want to do or preventing us from accomplishing those things. And I like to look at, well, there's two sides to paradigms. Like I just said, there's the empowering side of a paradigm, which can bring possibilities to you that you had no idea were even available. And then there's the limiting side. So the limiting side tends to fall into certain categories of paradigms, right? And you hear in people's language all the time. They say, I'm not a creative person. I'm not. I can't make money, or art just isn't for me. I don't know, any of these cliche things that you hear people do, or they don't know how to build something or anything like that. These are all paradigms, but these are more obvious paradigms that we have that get in the way of our limitations, and they're easier to spot because we call them out, right? We say, hey, I can't do this. The less obvious ones, and I think more limiting because of that, are the ones that we just internalize as we grow up, the ones that we don't question. And we grow up in certain environments that shape our paradigm, and unless we consciously explode that paradigm, we're going to be trapped by it. And a couple of the traps that we have that keep coming up for people, and unless they're challenged, unless they're questioned, will continue to run people. And what happens when they run people is that they say, they come into something that they might not agree with, and they say, well, you're wrong, not my paradigm is wrong, or that perhaps there's more truth than I know currently. If you're stuck in one of these paradigms, you tend to just say, okay, this is all the truth there is to know about this particular thing, and anything beyond that is just not true, so there's no point in me learning it. And people will play out their lives this way. And you see this in areas of religion. You see this in areas of money. You see this in areas of politics. You see this in areas of scientific discourse that we're talking about. Some people within scientific discourse, they say you either believe that everything that comes out of science, or you are a what do they call it, science denier or something like that, and you believe that the earth was created 3,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago and dinosaurs, I don't know, never existed, something like that. You're either in the science camp where you believe everything that comes out of science, or you're just a kook who doesn't believe in anything scientific at all. And again, those are two paradigms. There is a broader paradigm, which I try to push people to, which is, remain open to things. There's no way that as human beings in our evolution, we've come to understand everything there is to know about everything. So remaining humble and remembering that paradigms can be limiting can be a big step to freeing yourself from those paradigms. So I touched on some of the other ones that can be traps for people. Again, I want to point you guys to the work of Mark Passio for this, because he does a really good job, what he calls ego entrapment, of breaking this down. I like to look at it from a realm of paradigms, and I like to look at it that way because I can see how powerful they are. And I use this analogy for it, or metaphor rather, I guess, where our own paradigms are like a pot lid that are too small for the pot that it's going on, right? So we put the pot lid on top, which is our, our understanding of something stops at this lid. Okay, we put it on this pot thinking that we've got the whole entirety of the pot covered, and the thing just drops into the bottom, and we have about this much, understanding within our paradigm. And we cling to these pot lids, pulling them down as tight as we can to limit the knowledge that we have. And all I'm saying is just let go of it. If you actually have the appropriate pot lid, to continue with it, for the right size pot, then you're going to have this much bigger space of understanding. All right? But even then, don't cling so tightly to it, because there could be more. I want to talk about the other things, the other aspects of paradigms, the other popular ones that can control people. Money is a big one. People are driven by money, by fear of money, by misunderstanding of what money is. If you don't know what money is, how it's created, what the value is, I highly recommend that you check out fractional reserve banking. Google that. Google fiat currency. I'll probably talk more about this down the road, but those are two starting points to gain an understanding of money and to free ourselves from this idea that money controls us. Really, it's just a tool, and the only value that is in it is the value that we ascribe to it. Okay, so there is no innate value in money whatsoever, and when you can free yourself from that, you can return to where real value is, which is found inside you. The other aspects, religion, religion is a great tool for some. What I found is that it has become more of a control system, and maybe has always been this way, a control system to kind of box people in and confine their spirituality. Because what I found on my own spiritual path is that while I rejected religion a long time ago, I threw out the idea of a creator or God or whatever you want to call it with that concept, okay? And as I went further down my journey, I had to open back up to the idea of spirituality, and I'll talk more about this in a later podcast too, but I had to open up to the idea of spirituality and divorce that from the ideas of religion. I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school for a short time. There was a lot of the more restrictive sides of religion that I had to experience, and so when I shed that, again, I shed the idea of a God or a supreme being, a supreme intelligence, whatever you want to call it, and turned my back on anything spiritual. When I came back to a spiritual understanding of things, I recognized that the religion is a separate thing, and it's good for some people, it's not good for all people, but it doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all of your spiritual understanding. So I think that's all I'll say about religion for right now. I'm not trying to attack anybody's particular religion, nothing against Catholics in particular. That was just the thing that I experienced. But knowing that once we kind of say, okay, everything there is to know about spirituality or the world or anything is between the covers of this one book, then I think we've already limited ourselves. So religion, again, is one of those things. We touched on science, touched on money, politics, right? You're either in my camp or the other camp, and we, ne'er the two shall meet, right? And I think that for the most part, this last election for us kind of helped blow up this idea that you actually have two different parties, right? Because you had, I don't want to get too much into politics right now, but you had the Democratic Party pushing a message, okay, and then you had the establishment Republicans pushing pretty much the same message. And then you had this one guy who was kind of standing out and causing a big, uproar and scene by calling out both sides of this. And I've heard politics described best as two wings of the same bird, okay? But they're both flying in the same direction, right? Or the idea that the political football may go back and forth between both sides, but it's still moving down the field in the same direction. And that's what I found when I came to look more into politics. I realized that this false left-right paradigm that we have, this idea of, this group has this set of values and this group has this set of values, and that they are, they're just hashing out their differences, is not true. That from establishment politics side of things, they're all working towards the same goal, which is globalization and ultimately a one-world government, which we can talk about that down the road too. But the reason people...
I was wondering if you were in there because
the reason people get stuck in, sorry, I just had somebody walk by me. They get stuck in that because they say, okay, well, I identify my values as a person, my human values, with this group and with this group. And if you can come to realize that neither of those groups represent real values, they're just playing a role, they're just playing a character, then you can free yourself from having to be in one camp and identify with one camp or another. So again, I'm not shy about talking about politics, so I will probably get down, we'll probably get into that sooner rather than later. But I just want to throw that out there, that as a paradigm, politics can be very limiting, and it can say, again, it's an us versus them thing. And we should realize whenever we're in a situation where it feels like us versus them, we're bumping up against one of our paradigms, okay? And it needs to be questioned. We need to understand, do we have a full understanding of the situation? Is there more for me to learn? I think that's always a good question. That ties into humility, which will be a subject for another video as well. I think I'll leave it at that. Again, I'll link to Mark Passio and his work down below, and if I can think of anybody else in terms of breaking up paradigms, I will link to that as well. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know. If you have any ideas for other paradigms that can be limiting, please put those in the comments, and we can keep this discussion going. All right, thanks.